Your temperature gauge just crossed into the red on a highway in July. Right now, thousands of drivers across America are pulling over with steam pouring out from under the hood, and a tow truck is about to take them straight to a shop quoting $1,400 for a new radiator. Here's what that shop won't check first. In most of these cases, the real problem is a $4 part the size of a bottle cap. Not a radiator, not a water pump, a stuck thermostat. I'm going to show you the exact 90-second test that tells you which one you actually have before you let anyone touch your engine. Your transmission just slammed into second gear, again, and somewhere in America right now, a service advisor is about to hand a customer a written estimate for $3,247. New torque converter, new clutch packs, full teardown. Your transmission is done, he'll say, shaking his head like he's delivering a diagnosis, not a sales pitch. Here's what he won't tell you. 68% of independent transmission shops report the real fix, in cases exactly like this one, is a bottle of fluid that costs less than a fast food meal. Not a rebuild, not a replacement, a $12 bottle poured into a dipstick tube. Ford, Toyota, Volvo, Subaru. Every major brand has documented cases where a fluid problem got diagnosed and priced as a mechanical death sentence. So here's the promise for the next 28 minutes. I'm going to show you exactly which transmission symptoms can be fixed for under $20, which ones absolutely cannot, and how to tell the difference before you sign anything. Because getting this wrong in either direction, paying for a rebuild you didn't need, or skipping a rebuild you actually did need, can cost you your entire transmission. Stick around, because the difference between those two outcomes comes down to one 5-minute check I'm about to show you. Why you can trust this data. Before I show you the fix, you need to know this isn't a YouTube home remedy. This is documented, published repair data from working transmission shops. Not theory, not a forum myth. Pavlik Automotive, an independent repair shop in Vancouver, BC, published exactly this scenario. A client brought in a 2004 Volvo S60 with rough, uncomfortable shifting. He'd already been to the Volvo dealer. The dealer's answer? Pull the transmission and overhaul it. Full removal, full teardown. The independent shop offered something the dealer refused to even attempt. A transmission fluid flush, no guarantees, for around $300. The owner figured a few $100s was a reasonable gamble against a $3,000 to $4,000 repair bill. They drained the fluid. It came out looking like dirty motor oil, barely recognizable as transmission fluid. New fluid went in. A thorough road test afterward found smooth, normal shifting, no overhaul, no $4,000 bill. That's not a fluke story I found on Reddit. That's a published case study from a working shop with their name and reputation on it. But here's what makes this criminal. The dealer had access to the exact same $300 flush. They just didn't offer it. They went straight to the $3,000 plus estimate. I also pulled cost data from RepairPal, Kelly Blue Book, and independent transmission specialists across the country to build the numbers I'm about to show you. Every dollar figure in this video is sourced, not guessed. What's actually going wrong inside your transmission? Here's the part your mechanic assumes you don't understand, and honestly, most drivers don't, which is exactly why this scam works. Automatic transmission fluid isn't just lubricant, it does 3 jobs at once. It lubricates moving parts, it cools the system, and, this is the part that matters here, it creates the hydraulic pressure that actually squeezes your clutch packs together to change gears. Inside a clutch pack, you've got alternating steel discs and friction discs stacked like a deck of cards inside a drum. When your computer calls for a shift, fluid pressure clamps that stack together so power transfers cleanly. When the fluid's friction modifiers break down, from age, from heat, from 60,000 miles of highway driving, that clamping force weakens. The discs start to slip against each other instead of locking. That's the shudder. That's the bang into gear. That's the hesitation before it engages. None of that is mechanical damage. That's a chemistry problem happening inside a metal box that most shops treat as a black box they don't want to open. AmSoil's own engineering data shows exactly this. Transmission fluid maintains crisp, confident shifting for tens of thousands of miles, but as friction properties deplete, shift quality degrades in a slow, predictable curve, long before anything is mechanically broken. Here's the number that should make you angry. Shifting issues frequently start showing up once fluid hits 40,000 to 60,000 miles without a service. That's not a rare edge case. That's the majority of transmissions on the road right now, because most owners have never once had this fluid changed. Manufacturers spent years marketing lifetime fluid transmissions, fluid that supposedly never needs changing. Multiple Toyota and Honda dealers have been caught telling customers exactly that line, even as their own service bulletins listed fluid change intervals. Lifetime doesn't mean the fluid lasts forever. It means the fluid lasts until the transmission fails, and then the vehicle's lifetime is over anyway. But here's what makes this even trickier. On newer vehicles with adaptive transmissions, there's a computer sitting between you and an honest diagnosis. These transmission control modules literally learn your driving habits and the frictional characteristics of your fluid, then continuously adjust shift timing to compensate. As the fluid degrades, the computer quietly adjusts around it, so you don't feel the slow decline the way you'd feel a sudden failure. That's the manufacturer's software masking the exact symptom that would have told you it was time for a service. And there's a twist. Right after a fluid change, that same computer can still be running the old adaptation values for a short window, which is why some owners feel a temporary rough patch immediately after a service and panic, thinking the flush made things worse. It didn't. The computer just hasn't relearned yet. A shop that doesn't explain that detail is either uninformed or hoping you'll come back in a panic and pay for the fix to a problem that was already resolving itself. Before we get into exactly what's in this fix and how to use it, subscribe now so dealers use to sell you a $600 part your battery could actually fix. The $3 fix, what it actually is. So what's actually in this bottle that a $3,000 estimate conveniently skips? Lucas Transmission Fix is a non-solvent additive built from a blend of friction modifiers and seal conditioners. It doesn't dissolve or strip anything inside your transmission, which matters because older, cheaper stop-slip products use solvents that soften seals temporarily and then destroyed them permanently. Lucas works differently. It renews the surface of worn transmission bands, restores grip between clutch plates, and breaks down varnish and sludge buildup inside the valve body. The exact buildup that causes delayed or rough shifts. A 24-ounce bottle runs under $20 at any auto parts store. Lubiguard's Instant Shutter Fix is even more targeted. It's built specifically to stop torque converter shudder, that shaking sensation at highway speed that most drivers assume means engine trouble. One tube runs $9.45 on Amazon. Most transmission rebuilders add a version of this product after they finish a full rebuild, as standard practice, because they know it protects the fresh seals and keeps shift quality smooth. If professional rebuilders trusted enough to use it on transmissions they just spent thousands of dollars rebuilding, that tells you something about how legitimate the chemistry actually is. And these aren't fringe products with no track record. Amazon customer data on Lubiguard's Instant Shutter Fix shows a 4.5 out of 5 rating backed by more than 4,600 user reviews, an enormous sample size for a niche automotive product, and one that's hard to fake or manipulate. Users consistently report it does exactly one job: stopping lockup shutter, and does it well, though some note the effect can be temporary and occasionally requires a second application. Lubiguard's broader automatic transmission fluid protectant carries a similar 4.6 out of 5 across more than 2,200 reviews, with owners crediting it for immediately resolving both gear slipping and hard shifts. That's not marketing copy. That's thousands of independent car owners, with no relationship to the manufacturer, reporting the same outcome. Real owner data backs this up. Forum reports on Ford's 6R80 and 6HP transmissions are full of cases where techs diagnosed delayed engagement, slipping, and torque converter shudder as terminal, and a fluid and seal service, sometimes with an additive added, brought vehicles back that were written off as a lost cause, in one mechanic's own words. Cars that couldn't move under their own power left the shop shifting normally, with no fault codes. But here's the conspiracy layer nobody talks about. A full drain and refill service, done properly with a filter change, costs a shop roughly $147 to $232 in parts and labor, based on 2026 national averages. A rebuild bills out at $1,500 to $3,500 minimum, and a full replacement climbs past $4,000. Do the math on which repair a shop's bottom line actually prefers you to choose. Rick, who runs Rick's Free Auto Repair Advice and has spent decades diagnosing transmissions, explains the mechanism behind why a flush works in the first place. Dirty or contaminated fluid directly affects transmission performance, and the friction modifiers inside ATF physically wear out over time, causing the clutch discs and steel separators to slip against each other instead of gripping. Fresh fluid restores that gripping action in the clutch packs almost immediately, which is exactly why a road test right after a flush can reveal a completely different transmission than the one that drove in. More proof. Real owners. Real savings. Let's look at more than one case, because one story could be luck. This is a pattern. Nick, a Subaru owner who documented his own repair, put it simply: doing his transmission fluid service himself cost about $60 in parts. He compared that directly to the alternative, a $4,000 transmission rebuild he avoided entirely. His words? The peace of mind alone was worth it, but the money saved made the decision obvious. On a Ford F150 owner forum, one contributor, a service technician working on 6R80 and 6HP transmissions, described the pattern repeatedly. Filter O-rings not sealing properly, valve body tube seals starting to leak, adapter seals cracking. symptoms that looked exactly like internal transmission failure. His fix, described case after case, replace the leaking seals, install fresh ATF, and road test. He stated plainly that this approach fixed more than 16HP/6R80 that was written off as a lost cause, vehicles that came in unable to move, and left driving normally with 0 fault codes. That's not one lucky outcome, that's a repeated, documented pattern across an entire transmission platform. Compare that to a real dealer quote pulled from a Toyota owner forum. One dealership quoted $489.95 just for a transmission fluid flush on a 2015 Tacoma, nearly triple what an independent quick lube chain charged for the same drain and fill service, around $110 to $150. Same fluid, same transmission, almost 4 times the price, from the same brand's own dealer network. But here's what makes this even more infuriating. Some dealers don't just overcharge for the fluid service, they refuse to perform it at all and push straight to "your transmission needs to come out." One Toyota Camry owner reported being told by a dealership supervisor that the transmission fluid was designed to last the lifetime of the vehicle, and the service simply wasn't offered, until the same owner found the identical service listed as a maintenance interval on a different Toyota dealer's own website. Same manufacturer, 2 different stories depending on which service bay wanted your business that day. One more data point, straight from the industry itself. A service advisor at a Northeast dealership, when asked directly about her own pricing, defended a $250 fluid change by pointing out that most of the replacement transmissions her shop installs come from vehicles with neglected maintenance. Read that again. Even the person selling you the $250 service is confirming, in her own words, that skipped fluid changes are what create the $3,000 rebuilds down the road. And yet plenty of dealers still treat the fluid change as the upsell instead of the standard, and reach for the rebuild quote first when a customer walks in already showing symptoms. The systemic reveal. Why shops push the expensive option? Here's the part that goes beyond one bad dealer. This is systemic, and it comes down to one number: labor rate. A transmission fluid service takes a technician roughly 30 to 60 minutes. Build labor on that job, even at premium shop rates, tops out around $150 to $250 total. A full transmission removal, teardown, rebuild, and reinstall takes 8 to 12 hours of build labor, at rates now running $100 to $220 an hour depending on your state. Do that math. A rebuild generates roughly 10 to 20 times the labor revenue of a fluid service before parts are even added. Now think about the incentive structure that creates. A service advisor working commission or a shop under pressure to hit a revenue target has almost no financial reason to recommend the $150 fix over the $3,000 job, especially when the symptoms look identical from the customer's seat. Slipping is slipping, shuddering is shuddering. Most drivers can't tell a fluid problem from a mechanical one by feel, and most shops know that. An AHRS-certified transmission specialist operating out of Sonoma County, California, put it directly. A transmission that's slipping might need a $150 fluid top-off, or it might need a $3,500 rebuild, and you genuinely cannot know which one without a proper diagnostic. Their own words. They've saved customers thousands of dollars by identifying a simple fix that other shops would have turned into a major repair. That's coming from inside the industry, not from an outside critic. AAA's own 2025 Vehicle Ownership Cost Survey confirms transmission repair sits as the second most expensive single repair category American households face, right behind engine work, averaging over $1,000 a year in total vehicle repair spending per household. That's the size of the market a rushed, unnecessary rebuild recommendation is cutting into. This is exactly the kind of upsell pattern we track every week on this channel. So if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time, because next video breaks down the coolant flush scam costing owners their entire radiator. The honest warning: when this fix will not work. Now I have to be straight with you because this channel doesn't do miracle cures, and a transmission fluid additive is not magic in a bottle. An expert who runs a repair advice site focused on transmission diagnostics and has been doing this work for decades puts it in blunt terms. A flush only works if degraded or contaminated fluid is actually the root cause. There's a point of no return. If your transmission fluid is already dark brown or black, if it smells distinctly burnt, and if the transmission is already slipping badly under load, a flush at that stage carries a real risk of making things worse, not better. Here's why. Old, degraded fluid sometimes accumulates friction material and debris from worn clutch packs. That gunk can actually create false support, extra internal pressure that's temporarily holding a slipping clutch pack together. Flush that fluid out, replace it with clean fluid, and you can lose that false support instantly. A transmission that was limping along can go from problematic to won't move within days of a flush. This isn't a rare theoretical risk. It's documented across multiple independent repair sources and as forum reports of transmissions failing shortly after a flush. So here's your 5-minute check before you spend $1 on anything. Pull the dipstick. Clean, healthy transmission fluid is translucent and red, sometimes light brown. If yours looks like that, even if it's a little dark, you're likely a good candidate for a fluid service or additive. Check for metal. Wipe the dipstick on a white paper towel. If you see metallic glitter or shavings, that's evidence of internal wear on gears or clutch material, not something a fluid change fixes. That's a mechanical problem, and it needs a real diagnostic, not a bottle from the auto parts store. Smell it. If it smells sharply burnt, not just old, but genuinely scorched, that's a sign the fluid has already broken down at a chemical level, and you're closer to the point of no return than the sweet spot. If your fluid is dark but clean of metal, and shifting only recently started getting rough, you're in the zone where a fluid service and an additive have real documented odds of fixing the problem. If you're seeing metal shavings, or the transmission is already slipping severely, not just shuddering, but genuinely failing to engage, you need a proper diagnostic from a shop, not a YouTube fix. That's not me covering myself. That's the difference between saving $3,000 and turning a $300 problem into a $4,000 one. One more warning, and this one's specific. If you drive a CVT, the continuously variable transmission found in most modern Subarus, Nissans, and Hondas, do not reach for a generic additive like Lucas Transmission Fix. Most of these products are explicitly formulated for traditional automatic transmissions with torque converters and clutch packs, and are not designed for CVT or Ford Type F applications. CVTs use their own proprietary fluid, Subaru CVT-F2, Honda HCF2, Nissan NS3, and putting the wrong chemistry into a CVT can cause the exact belt-slipping failure you're trying to avoid. If you have a CVT, stick to a proper CVT-specific fluid exchange at a shop that stocks your manufacturer's proprietary fluid. Let's put every number from this video in one place. The additive fix, Lucas Transmission Fix or Lubigard Shutter Fix, roughly $10 to $20 at any auto parts store. Pour it in yourself in about 10 minutes. No lift, no tools required. A proper fluid service, drain and fill nationally averages $147. A full machine flush averages $232, done at an independent shop with a filter change included. A dealer's inflated version of the same service, documented cases running $285 to $490 for the identical fluid change, sometimes triple the independent shop price for zero additional value. A transmission rebuild, $1,500 to $3,500 for mainstream vehicles like Ford, Chevy, Toyota, and Honda, climbing past $4,500 on CVTs and dual-clutch transmissions, and $6,000 to $9,000 on diesel or luxury applications. A full transmission replacement, $2,900 to $7,100 on average, according to Kelley Blue Book's own published data, sometimes topping $8,000 on complex or luxury platforms. Run the comparison. A $12 bottle and a $150 flush against a $3,000 to $7,000 repair bill for symptoms that, in a documented, repeated pattern, turn out to be fixable with the cheap option. That's not a small gap. That's the difference between paying cash and financing a repair on a credit card at 24% interest. And location matters more than most drivers realize. High-cost states, California, New York, Massachusetts, routinely run 15 to 25% above these national averages, meaning a rebuild quoted at $3,500 in the Midwest can land closer to $4,400 on the coast for the identical job. That gap alone is bigger than what most families spend on car maintenance in an entire year. If you're in one of those high-cost states, the incentive to rule out the cheap fix first is even stronger, because the downside of getting talked into an unnecessary rebuild is proportionally worse. Here's exactly what to do if your transmission is shuddering, hesitating, or shifting rough right now. Step 1. Check the dipstick using the 3-point test I just walked through. Color, metal, smell. This takes 5 minutes and costs nothing. Step 2. If the fluid looks like a good candidate, dark but clean, no metal, buy a fluid additive or book a drain and fill at an independent shop first. Don't authorize a rebuild estimate before you've ruled out the cheap fix. Step 3. If a shop tells you your transmission needs a full rebuild or replacement without first pulling a fluid sample and checking for metal, ask them directly why they skipped the diagnostic. A shop that's confident in their diagnosis will have no problem showing you the fluid and explaining what they found in it. Step 4. If you do have metal in the pan or fluid that's already burnt black, don't try to save it with an additive. That's real internal damage, and pushing a fluid change on a transmission that's far gone can genuinely finish it off. At that point, get a second opinion from an independent transmission specialist, not just the first shop that quoted you, before authorizing a repair over $2,000. That single sequence, check, then decide. is the difference between the driver who spends $15 and the driver who gets talked into a 5-figure decision they didn't need to make. One more piece of the plan. If you go the additive route and the shudder or slipping doesn't improve noticeably within 50 to 100 miles of driving, stop. That's your signal the problem was never fluid related in the first place, and continuing to add product on top of product just delays a diagnosis you need. And if you're buying a used vehicle with no service records, which describes a huge share of the used car market right now, treat a transmission fluid check as a non-negotiable part of your pre-purchase inspection. A 5-minute dipstick check before you sign can save you from inheriting someone else's neglected maintenance. Here's the bottom line. An expensive part isn't always the expensive fix. Sometimes the actual problem is $12 of chemistry your shop never mentioned because their commission structure doesn't reward mentioning it. Check your fluid before you sign for a rebuild. It's the cheapest diagnostic test you'll ever run on your own car. If this video just saved you $3,000, tell me in the comments what your dealer quoted you. I read every one of them. Our next video exposes the coolant flush service that's quietly destroying radiators nationwide, and the $12 fix your dealer skips every single time. Subscribe so you don't miss it. One last thing before you go. Screenshot the dipstick test from this video or bookmark this page. The next time a shop hands you an estimate over $1,000 for slipping or shudder, you'll know exactly which question to ask before you sign anything, and exactly which $12 bottle might save you from ever needing that estimate at all.